Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right, welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Our guest today is Doug. So, Doug, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do for a living.
Sure. Doug Renfro in Fort Worth, Texas. We have an 83-year-old family business, and we manufacture salsa, relishes, barbecue sauce, cheese sauce, things like that for both retail and food service.
Awesome. So, can you just tell me a little bit more about the history of this business? Like I said, it's 83 years old. So, who founded it? And really, just how did you get into it?
Sure. My grandparents founded in 1940 out of the house. My granddad actually distributed grocery items in the 30s for a company in the north side here in Fort Worth. And it's been very evolutionary. We're currently the largest independent brand of salsa in the country, but my grandparents didn't know what salsa was. They made syrup. And when I was a child, we just made a Southern relish. Then we got into taco sauce in the 70s. And just over time, you have to morph and constantly pivot to meet what consumers want to eat at the time.
Makes sense. So, how did you get involved in the business?
I was born. So every summer since sixth grade, I had all the nastiest production jobs to make extra money. And in college, I actually lived at home and went to school at 8 o'clock, came back, mixed all the spices for about 3.5 years and went home and did my homework repeat. So as sexy and glamorous as that sounds, I got out there and worked for a corporation for 7 years in Dallas and Plano, EDS, which was Ross Perot at the time. And then I was there when they sold it to General Motors. So suddenly I was wearing coat and tie, got an MBA, CMA, some other acronyms. Great trading, wonderful people, smart people, good money, but of course, being a giant corporation kind of sucked the soul out of your body. So 30 years ago, I came back and joined my two cousins, my dad and my uncle, and trying to take us to another level, which we've done over 30 years. So we're making almost 100,000 jars a day when we run the line now. And my dad has memories as a child when they filled jars with a spoon. So it's been a nice transition.
Can you just talk more about that? Obviously, I'm sure that when you joined, because you mentioned, things were a lot different. But when you came in, what specifically did you do to help take Mrs. Renfro's to a whole different level?
We really needed repackaging. And one of the things I point out dealing with family business classes and things is that, when you tell an older generation that you want to change something, sometimes what they hear is you think they're an idiot. And that's not the case. It's just times change. So we had a label that had been perfect in the 50s. It looked like my grandmother just whipped up in her station wagon, which is what we wanted in the 50s. Unfortunately, it was now like 1992. And we were starting to lose sales and have brokers fire us because they loved the product, they loved the family, the promotions, they hated the label. It's not that they hated it, they felt customers and retailers did. So we started bringing the label into the 20th century. And also we only had mild, medium, and hot. And that wasn't appealing. There was too many of those. So when nobody was looking one day, I threw black beans and the medium salsa and some habanero pepper, which back then was super exotic. And we would go to the customers and say, I know you have a million red salsas. What you don't have is an everyday price point. By that, we don't mean not a Williams Sonoma $12.99 housewarming gift price, but every day I'll buy it, put it in my shopping cart for the rest of my natural life price. And they agreed that was a good idea, thank God. And we started growing the business through flavor innovation, as well as having better labeling. And we hired our first non-family sales executive who's been with us now close to 30 years to train us. My dad and my uncle had 50 years experience. They had 0 years experience selling through distributors that we now needed to go through, working with Walmart, for example. So we hired somebody who knew and hooked us up with a network of experts and have used them extensively.
That's awesome. Can you just talk more about your business today? So what percent of it is retail versus e-commerce?
E-commerce is tiny for us because we have what I call the trifecta of bad traits for that. We're heavy, breakable, and inexpensive. Really, it's like you're not going to buy Campbell's soup cans, through the internet, probably because it's $2 and it's heavy. But if you want a specific variety, you will. So what we're going to see is on Amazon and our own website fulfillment, Walmart, e-com, you're going to see the items that are the lower sellers at the store or the higher sellers through e-com, because it's the only way you can get it. If you're in Boise, Idaho, and you really want our raspberry chipotle salsa, you probably need to get it through e-com. If it's the habanero, which is our number one nationwide, you're going to get it at one of the many retailers because you're not having to pay for the shipping. And we have to design a special box and insert to keep, UPS and FedEx from breaking the jar, which they badly want to do. And that costs a lot of money. And we don't have a fleet of trucks. So I would say, probably 2% or less e-com. And from the rest, remember, we also do food service. I can't talk about who it is, but we make product in 4 1-gallon and 5-gallon plastic containers for restaurant chains. We can make their proprietary sauce. We can create them for them. Very flexible on that. And then within the retail, we probably make 50 different brands between helping up store brands or somebody like, if Dan has a recipe but no factory, we can do, Dan's delightful peach salsa for you, but we make it, sell it to you, and then you sell it to Kroger, Albertsons, Walmart, Wenco, HEB, etc.
So when it comes to these kinds of like one-off flavors, like how do you quantify for it to make sense? Or you're saying it's a very small percent of your business, but like, to keep producing a certain flavor where not many people are buying it, like how do you look at those metrics and say, hey, we should keep making this or we should stop making it?
Yeah, SKU rationalization, it's difficult, particularly when they're your babies. I've gotten to create all the flavors the last 30 years for the Renfro side, and I get my cousin's input and our sales director. But when you conceive of something and then after a few years, you have to say, that it's somebody's buying it. Maybe we're selling 40,000 jars a year, but it's not nearly worth what it takes. I would say in the last 5 years, we probably DC'd 7 or 8 items, and we've only come out with 2 new ones because the 80-20 rule works in everything in life. Our top 4 items are going to be half the sales. The top 7 are going to be 70%. And then you've got, a dozen and a half that are sitting at the bottom, comprising like 3 or 4%. But people like variety. You can't just have chocolate and vanilla. You've got to have the apple chipotle because people like the fact that they could get it. They usually don't, but they like it. Makes them feel fancier to know that they could if they wanted to.
So are those kinds of one-off flavors, are they like typically better sellers around Q4 for the holidays, like as a gift? Or do you have regular customers that are buying it, frequently?
Yeah, we're an everyday product, so we don't see fluctuations really. I mean, the Super Bowl, people eat more salsa, Cinco de Mayo, 4th of July, but not to an exorbitant amount. I have a friend in the barbecue sauce space, and that's wildly seasonal. People grill in the U.S. in particular. A lot of people grill in the summer kind of period. Other people grill year round, but fortunately, people eat chips and salsa every day.
Makes sense. So what would you say is the biggest challenge that you face right now in the business?
It's been the global supply chain issues, and that probably sounds wildly redundant with what you've heard from other people, but literally there are 3 or 4 ingredients that we've bought a year's worth and just stuck them in a warehouse because it's too scary that we may not be able to get them, particularly when there's an ocean between you and the source. Lock in your costs, lock in the supply, know you're going to have it. Then automation, labor obviously is more difficult for everybody, more expensive. So we try to spend more money on fewer people. So the people we do have are really well compensated, great people, loyal. And then you use more machines and get the machines to go faster. But and then rampant inflation. It's been a lot calmer this year. Last year, my dad's 86, and he would constantly say, I've never seen anything like this. I mean, we had things like the metal lids went up 45% overnight in cost with like less than 30 days notice. That just doesn't happen, except that it did.
So can you just talk more about, working with your family? Because obviously, I'm sure that there's some challenges, but also, people always say, like I have friends of mine that run companies also with their family, and that in terms of trust, right, there's nothing like it. So what does that look like in terms of like that component versus some of the challenging arguments that you might have at Thanksgiving dinner because, you're involved with your family in the business?
It's funny. People often, and growing up, my dad and my uncle were basically business partners their whole lives. And people would say, oh, I bet you spend all the holidays together. And they're like, oh, no, we see each other at work all day. We're not going to go do that together. And we all have our own families and lives. So for the most part, we treat it professionally as far as I can tell my cousin, I think his idea is stupid, and then ask where to go to lunch because we distinguish between personal and business. And that's been key to not killing each other, obviously. And it is a tremendous support. If someone's not family, you always have in the back of your mind they could quit and go to work for your competitor or get bored and go somewhere. And with family, they're not going anywhere. And it's been, it's super helpful when times get stressful. You've got each other's back. So I have two sisters not in the business. My two cousins I work with have two brothers not in the business. We have 14 fourth gen not in the business. There's plenty of family to go around, and the ones who've been willing to hunker down and sweep the warehouse when you're 12 and make less money than you could elsewhere at some point in your career, get to take the ride, good and bad, throughout the journey.
Makes sense. So can you just talk more about like what is the current vision, right? I mean, like as of right now, like what are you looking for to scale even more? Are you looking to maybe ramp up the e-commerce channel, maybe add some new flavors? Like what's really like in the pipeline right now for the next year or so?
Yeah, I appreciate you reminding me. I did want to say on e-commerce, you have to be there. Young people use Amazon as their search engine half the time. So if you don't have a professional presence, someone else is going to do it for you, and they're going to do a bad job of it. The fulfillment can go badly. And what happens with e-com is consumers don't drill down to see who actually fulfilled the order. So if it was some kid in an apartment in Columbus, Ohio, and he just threw our jar in a Ziploc bag and it broke, they're going to complain on our official Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest channels. That's where they're going to complain. And we didn't have anything to do with it. So we take a lot of pride. We've got a beautiful custom box. Like I said, the inserts keep anybody from breaking it. When you open the box through any e-com channel, it has my grandmother looking at you and says there's a little bit of grandma in every jar, ... Not literally. Makes a lot of people smile. So it's important to do that stuff, even if it's not large volume. And for our vision, it's just continuing to grow. We've got a lot of opportunity. It sounds impressive when I say we're number 8 out of, well over 600 brands that are tracked nationally. But remember, if we doubled, we'd be number 8. The big people are big. So we grow. There's lots of opportunities to grow our brand and to help other brands that we make grow and to create more store brands, better selections. Every day is fun because you wake up and you're not going to be bored.
So in terms of store brands, like what % of that is your business compared to so you're saying that you're doing white labeling for stores compared to actually like the Mrs. Renfro's, like what's the breakdown, percentage wise?
White label's not that much. We have a few large customers. The other space I call co-pack, which is like if you have a recipe, so it's not store brand, it's not my brand, it's your brand, and you may probably sell it to the same customers we do. It is your recipe, or sometimes it's a hybrid because you need help and you don't know what to do with a verde sauce, that sort of thing. But we're sort of it's sort of a third Renfro, a third co-pack, white label, a third food service. It's a nice blend.
Do you worry about you're essentially creating your competition or no?
We don't, because major retailers have pretty much given us as much shelf space as we're going to get. It's our problem to increase velocity per facing, so to speak. But and that's what always comes up at a cocktail party. If this subject comes up, people are like, what? You make your competitor's product? Why do they let you do that? Why do you do that? It's because we're all only going to get so many facings. So the way we can get 48 facings in a big retailer is to make product for multiple brands. They're not going to put 48 facings at Renfro. It's just not going to happen.
Right. That makes sense. So in terms of technology, what role does that play in your day-to-day business?
Quite a bit. We have an ERP that we have to lot track because we're an FDA inspected facility. And if you hand me a jar from 2 years ago, I can put in a code and tell you instantaneously to the 100th of a pound, every ingredient, every supply by lot number. And I can run a report and tell you this salt we used to make 32 different products under 9 different brands. 38 cases went here on that day. And that's for if you have a recall. If you can't provide that sort of detail, the FDA is going to make you recall a lot more than you should have to, because they just can't take the risk if you don't know for sure where that lot went. And then, of course, social media is fabulous because it's a leveler of the playing field for all of small companies compared to the big guys. We love that. It doesn't cost anything for me to post, whereas an ad campaign costs quite a bit.
Like, are you guys running ads like on Meta and Google or no?
I don't think so, but I would have to ask the ad agency. I mean, we spend most of our money right now between Facebook, Instagram, and we're doing an Instacart promotion, doing Walmart e-com. When people ask, different retailers have different things they want you to focus on. One retailer really wants coupons, the other one could care less. So you try to make each one happy and whatever helps move more of your product in that channel.
Makes sense. So obviously now in 2023, speaking of technology, that everybody's looking for the best use case for AI. So does AI play a role in your business? And if not, where do you see it coming in potentially helping your business in the future?
Right now, we're definitely just sitting back, watching, fascinated like everybody else. I do have people telling me it's going to wreak havoc with some of the advertising aspects of life because AI can just digest your website and spit out romance copy, geared to whatever you tell it pretty impressively. But our agency knows us personally, and they've done so much with our personalities and personality of the brand that I like using humans still. I'm old fashioned that way.
But have you seen, like, for example, use cases? I'm not sure if it's relevant for you, but like a high level chatbot, right, where it has conversations and product recommendations, upselling potential customers.
Yeah, it's not as relevant for us. I've definitely seen it. I absolutely get about 7 emails a day that are clearly AI generated. They're very persistent. I love the ones that say, okay, I won't bother you anymore if you don't reply to this one. Then, of course, they email you every day for the next year.
Right.
But yeah, our business is more, we're not selling that many customers ourselves. We sell to giant retailers and giant distributors, and then they go market to the consumer. And so we have consumer demand we try to create with social media and contests and things, but we're not doing a whole lot of one-on-one end consumer discussion.
Makes sense. What would you say is your top business priority now that we're about 1/4 of the way through Q4 of 2023, just finishing up this year? What is your top priority?
For us, it's always going to be increasing revenue, increasing profit, which is constantly under attack, with increasing costs. So that's done by automation, but also, I'm in a ton of share groups, go to other manufacturers, see what they're doing, other multi-level family, multi-generational family businesses, comparing notes, best practice. You've got to just keep honing and getting better and more efficient because your competitors are.
So is that more so focus on increasing revenue, but also essentially kind of what you were alluding to earlier, so cutting down your costs to make sure that your profit margins are able to stay where they're at?
Right. Yeah. Cost reduction per unit is a constant challenge and a goal. And that's, with automation, you can lower the cost, but then you have to pay for the machine and then there's maintenance. It's there's low hanging fruit. And then once that's done, it's a more difficult fruit.
Have you guys had to raise prices in the last few years with inflation?
Absolutely. Yeah. Last year we raised prices more than our entire 80+ year history because our costs went up more than in our 80-year history. It was strictly cost driven. And I prepared a PowerPoint with supporting data for every customer every time we had to go up, saying, if you'd like to see a copy of the tomato invoices, let me know. It's very transparent. We're not trying to make more money. We're trying to keep making money.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So what would you say is like the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew before you joined this family business?
Probably that, it's a long journey. Stop, smell the roses. Don't get overly excited either way when things are really good or really bad, because it's going to heal itself normally if you just are very persistent. But it's going to be a lot of battles. You're going to get, your nose bloodied, but you just persistent. I find many times the people that fail, they just stopped too soon. Sometimes they have a bad business model, but often they run out of cash or they get discouraged. And we get discouraged and we don't have a ton of cash, but you just every day figure out how to get to the next day and keep going. And you look up and it's been decades. So
I love that. Yeah. I mean, I always hear this expression that certain people say, they're like, well, there's no such thing as failed entrepreneurs who quit. That's oftentimes the case because people just quit and they give up too soon. So if we're going to chat again in 1 year from now, where do you see things going for the business?
Well, I would hope we have more customers, that we've helped the current customers expand their businesses and improve them, that we're more efficient, and that I've traveled to some interesting places, successfully been an officiant at my daughter's wedding. So those are the things I have coming up.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations. That's very exciting stuff. So somebody watching this wanted to reach out. Do you mind sharing your company website or social media handles, just best ways to get in contact with you?
Sure. The social media is going to be at Mrs. Renfro's, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, X, Pinterest. So MRSRENFROS. And then our website is renfrofoods.com.
Awesome. Well, Doug, thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure, and we're rooting for you.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too. All right, bye.
Bye-bye.